So, let's talk about one of the biggest challenges in education. How do we make sure that what we teach actually sticks? Today, we're going to dig into some really powerful, research-backed strategies to help our students not just learn, but remember.
You know the feeling, right? You teach a fantastic lesson, everyone seems to get it, the lights are on, and then, a week later, it's like it never happened. It's so frustrating. So why does this happen? And more importantly, what can we do about it?
And look, this isn't just in your head. It's the core challenge of teaching. The real goal is getting that new knowledge out of the in one ear, out the other zone, and into long-term memory. And today we're all about the science of how to do just that.
Okay, so let's put a name to this thing. We'll call it the learning retention problem. It's that huge, frustrating gap between what we spend so much time teaching and what our students actually hold on to.
But here's the good news. There's a way to tackle this problem head-on. The research points to this really cool concept called dual coding. And honestly, it's the key to closing that gap. And it's way more straightforward than you might think.
So, how does it work?
Well, think of the brain as having two different doorways for information. There's the linguistic one. That's for words, what we read, hear, and write. And then there's the non-linguistic one. That's for all the visual stuff, like pictures, diagrams, and even those images we cook up in our heads.
Now here's the secret sauce. When you get students to use both of those channels at the same time, you're not just adding 1 plus 1. It's more like 1 plus 1 equals 5. You're creating these deep, strong connections that make learning way more durable. It's like giving your students a genuine learning superpower.
So how do we actually do this in the classroom? Well, let's open up the toolkit and take a look at some practical strategies that mix these two approaches, the word-based and the visual, perfectly. First up, let's lean into the visual side with something called pictorial notes. Instead of just having students write down a bunch of words, you ask them to, well, draw what they're learning. These little sketches and diagrams can go alongside their written notes, or sometimes they can be the notes themselves.
I mean, just think about a complex process like the water cycle. Trying to memorize a paragraph explaining it can be tough. But when you have to turn those words into a simple drawing, your brain is forced to process it in a totally new way. It just clicks, and it's way easier to remember later.
Okay, now let's unleash that superpower we were talking about by actually combining the two methods. And a fantastic way to do this is with combination notes. It's an organizer that's literally built to make students use both words and pictures. See, this is dual coding in action. On one side, students are taking their regular word-based notes. On the other, they have to create a visual, a picture or a diagram. And then they have to tie it all together in a summary. This forces them to engage with the material on so many levels, which is just gold for memory. The toolkit is also packed with graphic organizers. But the key here is to think of them as specialized tools for different jobs. You wouldn't use a hammer to saw a board, right? Same idea. You've got to match the right organizer to the kind of information you're working with. So, for instance, if you're trying to understand events on a timeline, a sequence organizer is your best friend. But if you're comparing two different characters in a story, you'd grab a comparison organizer. These aren't just busy work. They actually give students a structure for their thinking. Okay, so having all these cool tools is one thing. But how do you know if they're actually working? How can you tell if all this is really making a difference? That's the all-important next step.
Well, you don't have to guess. The research gives us some clear look-fors. Are their summaries actually hitting the most important points? Are their drawings accurate? Can they explain what they wrote and drew? And here's the big one. Are they remembering this stuff a few days later? When you see these things, you know deep learning is happening.
And listen, nobody gets this perfect overnight. Just like any new skill, it's a journey. The source material actually gives us this fantastic little tool to help you see where you are on that journey and, how to get to that next level. Think of it like a ladder. Maybe right now you're at not using these strategies. That's fine. The next step is beginning, just trying them out. Then you move up through developing and eventually get to applying and even innovating, where you're adapting these tools on the fly to meet your students' needs.
And this right here, this applying level, this is where the real magic happens. It's a huge shift. You're not just handing out a cool worksheet anymore. You are actively watching and checking to see how these tools are impacting what your students are actually learning and remembering.
So, we've looked at the science, we've peeked inside the toolkit, and it all comes down to this. After seeing all these powerful, proven tools, there's really only one question that matters right now. Which one are you going to try out with your students tomorrow?